Hello, everybody. We are reading Chapter 6 of Make Your Bed, and this title is If You Want to Change the World, Slide Down the Obstacle Head First. Standing at the edge of the 30-foot water tower, I grabbed the thick nylon rope. On the end of the rope was attached to the tower, and the other end anchored on the ground to a pole 100 feet away. I was halfway through the Navy SEAL obstacle course, and I was on a record pace. Swinging my legs over the top of the line and holding on for dear life, I began to inch my way off the platform. My body hung underneath the rope, and with a caterpillar-like motion, I slowly made my way, foot by foot, to the other end. As I reached the end, I released my grip on the line, dropped onto the soft sand, and ran to the next obstacle. The other students in my class were yelling encouragement, but I could hear the instructor calling out the minutes. I had lost a lot of time on the slide for my life. My possum-style technique of negotiating the long rope was just too slow. But somehow I couldn't bring myself to slide down the rope head first. Going head first off the tower using a method called commando style was much faster, but also much riskier. You were less stable on the top of the rope than hanging underneath, and if you fell and injured yourself, you would be washed out of the class. I crossed the finish line with a disappointing time. As I doubled over trying to catch my breath, a grizzled old Vietnam veteran with highly polished boots and a heavily starched green uniform stood hunched over me. "When are you going to learn, Mr. Mack?" he said with an unmistakable tone of contempt. "That obstacle course is going to beat you every time unless you start taking some risks." 1 week later, I pushed my fears aside, mounted the top of the rope, and thrust my body head first down the slide for life. As I crossed the finish line in a personal best time, I could see the old Vietnam SEAL nodding his approval. It was a simple lesson on overcoming your anxieties and trusting your abilities to get the job done. The lesson would serve me well in the years to come. It was Iraq in 2004. The voice on the other end of the radio was calm, but an unmistakable sense of urgency. The 3 hostages we were searching for had been located. Al-Qaeda terrorists were holding them in a walled compound on the outskirts of Baghdad. Unfortunately, intelligence indicated that terrorists were about to move them in, and we had to act quickly. The Army lieutenant colonel in charge of the rescue mission informed me that they would have to conduct a dangerous daylight raid. To make matters worse, the only way to be successful was to land 3 Black Hawk helicopters carrying the assault force into the middle of the small compound. We talked through other tactical options, but it was clear the colonel was right. It was always preferable to conduct a rescue mission at night when the element of surprise was on your side. But this was a fleeting opportunity, and if we didn't act now, the hostages would be moved and probably killed. I approved the mission, and within minutes, the rescue force had boarded the 3 Black Hawk helicopters and was on its way to the compound. High above the Black Hawks, another helicopter was providing video surveillance back to my headquarters. I watched in silence as the 3 helicopters skimmed across the desert, just a few feet above the ground to hide their approach. Inside the open courtyard, I could see one man armed with an automatic weapon moving in and out of the building, seemingly preparing to leave. The helicopters were 5 minutes out, and all I could do from my headquarters was listen to the internal communications as the rescue force made final preparations. This was not the first hostage rescue I had overseen, nor would it be the last, but it was clearly the most daring, in light of the need to gain surprise by landing inside the compound. While the pilots from the Army Aviation Unit were the best in the world, this was still a high-risk mission. 3 helicopters with blades extending beyond 60 feet were going to land in a space with only inches to spare. Adding to the level of difficulty was an 8-foot-high brick wall that surrounded the compound, forcing the pilots to dramatically alter their approach angle. It was going to be a hard landing. Hard landing means bam when you land. Not hard like it's difficult. It means bam, which is really scary and can cause injuries and everything else. I could hear the rescue force preparing for impact. From the overhead surveillance, I could see the helicopter's final approach. The first aircraft flew flat and level, and then it crossed over the wall and the helo flared upward, settling into the tiny courtyard. Immediately, the rescue force exited the Black Hawk and began surging into the building. The second helicopter, right on the tail of the first, landed within a few feet of his companion. Dirt from the downwash of the helicopter blades caused a cloud of dust to encircle the landing area. As the third helicopter approached the compound, a giant plume of dust temporarily blinded the pilot. The front of the third helicopter inched over the wall, but the real wheel clipped the 8-foot-high barricade, throwing bricks everywhere. With no room to spare, the pilot forced the helo to the ground with a thud, but fortunately everyone inside was unharmed. Minutes later, I received word that all the hostages were safe. Within 30 minutes, the rescue force and the freed men were on their way back to safety. The gamble had paid off. Over the course of the next decade, I would come to realize that assuming risk was typical of our special forces operation. They always pushed the limits of themselves and their machines in order to be successful. In many ways, this is what set them apart from everyone else. However, contrary to what outsiders saw, the risk was usually calculated, thoughtful, and well planned. They just didn't go, it's risky, let's do it. It was risky, but they knew what they needed to do, and they knew the odds, and they took precautions, even though it was still risky. Even if it was spontaneous, the operators knew their limits, but believed in themselves enough to try. They knew their limits, but believed in themselves enough to try. Throughout my career, I had always had great respect for the British Special Air Service, the famed SAS. The SAS motto was, "Who dares, wins." The motto was so widely admired that even moments before the bin Laden raid, my command sergeant, Major Chris Ferris, quoted it to the SEALs preparing for the mission. To me, the motto was more than about how the British Special Forces operated as a unit. It was about how each of us should approach our lives. Life is a struggle, and the potential for failure is ever present. But those who live in fear of failure or hardship or embarrassment will never achieve their potential. Without pushing your limits, without occasionally sliding down the rope head first, without daring greatly, you will never know what it is that you can possibly achieve in life. I want to reiterate something, that last sentence. The operators knew their limits, but believed in themselves enough to try. Y'all, the best advice I can give you is to know yourself. What are my strengths? What are my weaknesses? What makes me get scared? What sets me off and makes me angry? These things shouldn't stop you from trying things, but they should be part of your evaluation process of whether this is something I'm cut out to do. Now, I'm not trying to say if it's not easy, don't do it. You should be doing the hard things. You should put yourself out there. You should take risks, sensible risks. You know, when my husband left the corporate America and decided to be a builder, good gravy. All the potential to fail in the world. He'd never been a builder. He didn't have a builder he was working for. He just went out on his own, but he knew himself. And he knew he'd never give up. He knew he did have some skills as a builder, even though he'd been, Mr. Techie at IBM or whatever. But he had been apprenticed the whole time he was growing up. His dad was a builder for DuPont Corporation, and his dad made him work with the plumbers. Dad made him work with the electricians and with the bricklayers. So he had a working knowledge. But he knew himself. He knew he was smart. He knew he was an entrepreneur. He knew that he would work until he couldn't work any longer to make it work. Y'all, don't be afraid to take a risk. Don't be afraid of embarrassment or be afraid of failure. Remember, failure is two things to me: quitting when the going gets tough or never trying to begin with. If you don't try anything that's hard, you're never going to succeed at anything, which will make you kind of a failure, right? Be willing to step outside of your comfort zone. Do things that are hard for you to do. They'll build strength. They'll build character. They will give you the joy of success like no other thing. If baking is easy for you, baking a cake, whatever, I made a cake, right? But if something's hard for you and you go after it anyway, this joy you will have, the sense of accomplishment you have will be far better than doing something that's not hard for you, right? Remember last week I told y'all, working in corporate America, not hard for me. So when I accomplished great things, I liked it. I liked the money a lot. But I didn't feel the overall sense of accomplishment as I do when I look at y'all's scores and they're up 8 or 9 points from when I got here. That gives me such joy. I know I have invested myself in you. I don't know that I'm going to be successful. I don't know that y'all are going to pay attention and learn, but I know if I don't try, I'm never going to have that sense of accomplishment. So know yourself and always take the risk, the sensible risk, to go outside your comfort zone and accomplish things. Even if you fail at what you tried, you will have a sense of accomplishment that you even tried, that you put yourself out there. That's huge. That's huge. That's even if you don't succeed, you will feel good about yourself. I know all of you are going to accomplish great things in this life. I have no doubt. And I can't wait to see what they are. Believe in yourself and take that risk. I will see y'all Monday. Bye.